Hello and welcome to livealittlehigher.com. Today we continue with Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers. We are in chapter 5, Mishna 9, where it says 7 traits characterize an uncultivated person and 7 a learned one. A learned person does not begin speaking before one who is greater than he in wisdom or in years. He does not interrupt the words of his fellow. He does not answer impetuously. He asks relevant questions and replies appropriately. He discusses first things first and last things last. About something he has not heard, he says, I have not heard, and he acknowledges the truth. And the reverse of these traits characterize an uncultivated person. So in his book, Visions of the Fathers, Rabbi Abraham Twersky says something very interesting. He says that people often ask him how in his very busy schedule, he's a psychiatrist, he's a Rav, he helps a lot of people. So they ask him how was it possible for him to write 30 books. And his answer was that he didn't write 30 books, rather he wrote one book in 30 different ways. So he says that he's always fixated with the idea that all psychological problems stem from one source. The only thing that wouldn't be this reason is if a person suffers from a biological imbalance, a chemical imbalance. But otherwise, he says that the primary source of mental illness is the lack of self-esteem. And so the concept of self-esteem must be properly understood. And we have to understand that this is a person that has dealt with thousands and thousands and thousands of people from all walks of life. He has seen it all. And at the end of the day, everything comes down to this issue, unless it comes from a chemical imbalance. So every person has a self-concept of self-image. We all view ourselves in a certain way. Not only we see ourselves in a certain way, we think the whole world sees us in that way. And if a person thinks of himself as a dull person, he's really not ever going to aspire to do anything with his life. Because if he sees himself as a good for nothing, then he's going to be a good for nothing. So the first thing that we need to really cultivate inside of our heads and in our children's minds is their self-worth. Their self-worth is very important. But self-worth doesn't mean that you're telling your child all day that he's the most beautiful one, that he's the most intelligent one, that he's the best one. This is not what gives self-esteem to a person. What gives self-esteem to a person is to acknowledge, to come to realize that he is made in the image of God, that Hashem created him, that he not only created him, he blew his life into him. He has a godly neshama inside, he has a godly spark of God inside, and Hashem created him in a certain way with the good and the bad so he can fulfill a purpose in this world that he needs him to fulfill. This is the most important thing. So when a kid is very intelligent, he's the brightest kid of the class, he's the summa cum laude of the college, he didn't make himself the most intelligent kid. And it's interesting because you see that sometimes the most intelligent and successful people are the people with the most lack of self-esteem. So self-esteem really is something that is attached to our true connection to God, to our purpose in this world, to our responsibility in this world. This is what gives us self-esteem. This is something that really empowers a person. Every time I sit down and I think, oh, I have this responsibility. Oh, because I have this, I have to be this. Because I do this, then I have to do this. It infuses me with a sense of power and responsibility. So we see here that the way a person sees himself is how he believes others see him. And this we learn from the Torah portion in which Moses sends the spies into the land of Canaan to scout the land before they're going to enter the land of Israel. And this is the fiasco that happened, that they all came with a bad report. At the end, the Jewish people had to be in the desert for another 40 years wandering until that generation died and the new generation could come into Israel. What happened to them is that they had very low self-esteem. And when they came out, they came to Moshe and the people and says, we saw giants and we were grasshoppers in their eyes. And this is how they saw themselves. They saw themselves very, very little. They saw themselves very little. They didn't see that that Hashem had promised them that they were going to go into this land, that He was going to fulfill their promise, that He was going to help them through, that He was with them, that they had everything they needed to be able to be successful. They didn't see that. They thought they were little. So many people have faulty self-image, and they see themselves less than they are in reality. And they may think of themselves as unattractive, boring, dull, incompetent, inadequate, or negative in any one or more ways. Well, the reality is completely the opposite. They're not boring, they're not incompetent, they're bright, they're intelligent, they're charming, and they see themselves the other way around. So the manifestation of low self-esteem is the result of a person either resigning himself to the status of inferiority, or he's defining himself against his distressing feeling in any number of ways. One of these defenses may be to try to show that he's not inferior. So we see many times that there's bullies in the schools, for example, or bully in your workplace, or a bully in your house. These bullies really have very low self-esteem, and they need to put people down so they can feel inferior, so they can feel they're bigger than everybody else. There's a story, I don't remember, one of the Rebbes, one of the sons was hitting the other brother. And the father asked him, why are you hitting your brother? He says, because he's much taller than me and I want to feel taller. So the father says, if you want to feel taller than someone else, you don't hit them, you don't make them lower. Get yourself on top of a chair and make yourself higher. But you don't make someone lower, you make yourself higher. And so this is what he's saying here. So he says one of the defenses may be to try to show that he's not inferior. Earlier, there's a thesis that he presents that the gava, vanity of a person, is a desperate attempt to avoid the pain of feeling inferior. So sometimes a person that would look very vain, or he would look like he's very intelligent and he wants to show off, and he wants to show off how much he knows, and he has like this haughtiness inside of him, is in reality comes from the pain of feeling inferior. He needs to feel that he's somebody. So in contrast to the impression we may have that a vain person thinks of himself as the greatest, the fact is that he actually feels very inadequate. And so the 7 traits that this Mishna lists of a golem, because at the end it says veil begolem, the 7 traits that a Mishna lists of a golem, which is a person that is not refined, that is not cultivated, we can see them in this Mishna, because he does completely the opposite of what the Mishna says of a refined person. So the person that is not refined, he's always going to be talking and interrupting other people when they're talking. They're going to talk impetuously. He's not going to be asking relevant questions. This person is going to put the last things first and the first things last. And about something he has not heard, he says, I have heard. He's going to be also not truthful. He's going to make believe that he knows everything. And we see here that this is what happens to a person that really has low esteem, low self-esteem. And why is this person referred to as a golem, an unrefined person, an unfinished person? A golem is the raw material of which an object is made, or an incomplete object. A person who lacks a true self-awareness is an incomplete person. So a person who doesn't value what he is in reality, he has a spark of God inside of him and he's here for a purpose, then he is not a complete person. He's not a complete person. And a complete person knows the truth about himself. This is what makes a person have good self-esteem. Is a person that really knows who he is. And so we should realize that a person can adjust properly to reality only to the extent that he has corrected his perception of reality. So he has to have a rectified vision of himself, of who he really is in reality, to be able to be a learned and a refined human being. So a person must perceive himself correctly in order to function optimally. And that is the message of this Mishnah. So for parents out there, really, the best service you can do for your children is to teach them how precious they are, because they are really a manifestation of Hashem in this world. They come here to reveal God in this world. This is who they are. As Jews, we come here to bring the light, to be lamplighters, and we have a responsibility, each one of us. And every person is made differently, and sometimes there's people who have things that we would seem like limitations, and in reality, these limitations that would make a person different, in reality is the qualities that person needs to be able to live up to his purpose. So when we appreciate everything we are and who we are and how Hashem made us, then we're going to be able to live optimally with being the best that we can be. So I leave you here. I wish you a blessed week, and remember, live a little higher. Thank you.